reliable leniency to do it. But everyone agrees to it, but definitely it's an accepted opinion. It's not the way it grows. It's not how it's generally done in terms of gatherings, like one put everything together. So you do it place where it grows. Place where it grows, it's not cut up. Or if you're doing it inside the house and you actually attaching it together, we said it's either gathering together a place where it grows, or even if it does place where it doesn't grow, well, you're actually sticking it together. But it all has to do with the way it is, the way it grows. If it's cut up, it seems that it's not an issue. So continuing with the halachos of threshing, dash, extracting. So we can squeeze all fruits that are generally squeezed for its liquid. We said we cannot squeeze grapefruits, oranges, lemons, pineapple. Fruits that are not usually squeezed for its liquid, logically, you're allowed to squeeze it for its liquid. So let's say cantaloupe. Let's use that example. Cantaloupe. I've never seen cantaloupe juice. I don't think it's a cantaloupe juice, do they? So cantaloupe, logically, you're allowed to squeeze for its juice. Let's say we want to make juice. But even then, never says it's a good thing to restrict if you're actually squeezing it for the liquid. What about when you're not squeezing for its liquid? You're squeezing grapefruit not for its liquid. Why are you squeezing it? It could be you don't want the liquid, you just want to have the whatever, the mush, whatever. Let's say. So are you allowed to squeeze it then? So there's an argument. And the Alter Rebbe says you should be strict. See, when you're squeezing grapefruits and pineapple and oranges, which you're not allowed to squeeze for its liquid, but now you're squeezing it not for its liquid, you should be strict and still not squeeze it. However, when you are squeezing fruits like pineapple, like cantaloupe, that no one squeezes for its liquid, so then if you're not squeezing it, we said you should be strict not to squeeze even cantaloupe, but that stringency is when you're squeezing it for its liquid. If you're not squeezing it at all for its liquid, then there's no room for stringency at all. In other words, in simple words, what we're saying is all the fruits that we are familiar with that we don't squeeze for its liquid, what about if you're not squeezing it for its liquid? This is machlekes, if you're allowed. But the best thing is to be strict. The proper thing is to be strict, not to squeeze it, even if it's not for its liquid. But those opinions are saying that you could squeeze it. Then you have liquids that is absorbed inside food. So, for example, if you dip the challah inside the soup, and then you want to squeeze the soup out of the challah, let's say. So that is a rabbinic prohibition, because according to Minat Torah, when liquid is absorbed inside food, it became absorbed. Not talking about when it's a fruit that naturally has liquid. We're not discussing that now. We're discussing when the challah absorbs the liquid. According to the Torah, we don't view it as liquid inside food. We view it as a solid food. The liquid becomes nullified to the food. It's viewed as solid food. And therefore, according to the Torah, you are allowed to, it's not called extracting. If you take the challah that has soup liquid inside and you squeeze it out, it's not called extracting. Practically, are you allowed? Well, if you are interested in the liquid, you're squeezing it out for the purpose of the liquid, you're not allowed. You're squeezing it back into the bowl of soup, not allowed. If you're squeezing it, let's say it's going to waste for whatever reason, bread, the challah got too soggy, you can't, you're not eating it, let's say. You don't like it. Now you're going to squeeze it out into the garbage, it's going to waste. If it's going to waste, there's no problem. It's 100% permitted, according to all opinions. Then you have another form of extracting when it comes to, let's say, a towel or rag that has liquid absorbed into it. That is technically a real example of extracting because you have liquid absorbed inside the rag, inside the shmata, inside the sponge, and you're squeezing it out. However, usually it's only rabbinically prohibited because you're not interested in the liquid. It only becomes prohibited rabbinically when you have an interest. I'm sorry, it's only prohibited by the Torah if you're interested in what you're extracting. But when you are using the rag and the sponge and you're wiping it, the liquid is coming out, you're not obviously, you're not interested in the liquid that's coming out, obviously. So even though it's prohibited, but it's prohibited rabbinically, it's not prohibited by the Torah, practically it's prohibited. But it's a rabbinical prohibition. Then you have the great challenge when it comes to wipes and Shabbos, diapering babies. What do you do? Very challenging. A lot of women, they can't handle this halacha, but I'll teach it anyways because that's what the halacha is. And that is wipes is not allowed to be used on Shabbos because when you're using wipes, you're using a certain amount of pressure. So using a wipe, if I'm going to wipe and I'm wiping, so this pressure, because if you're wiping, you're using some pressure. Unless you're not using any pressure, then you're not wiping. Then you're not doing the job that you need to do. So when you're wiping with a tissue, with the wipe, you are using a certain amount of pressure and there's some liquid coming out. There are wipes that have a hechsher. So if you have a hechsher, then you rely, hopefully it's a reliable hechsher, like any other food that you buy. Hopefully it's reliable. It means there's a minuscule amount of liquid in it and it's not really coming out. I think the some are still strict with it, but at least there's a hechsher. So if you're not using wipes, so basically the way to do it is, again, a lot of people don't like this method, but this is the best way, as opposed to using wipes. And that is use tissues. Use tissues, just the way it is, and you clean the baby, just with tissues. And then when you're done, you take a spray bottle. They sell these Shabbos spritz bottles, and you spray, and then you take tissues again, and you wipe again. That's the best way to do it. Again, in terms of muktzeh, diapers are muktzeh, and what you wipe with is also muktzeh, but you're allowed to move it because it's disgusting and it's bothering you. That's the reason why you're allowed to use it, move it. So by default, there is no issue. There's usually no conversation about muktzeh with diapers because you're allowed to move it because it's annoying you, it's bothering you. Theoretically, if you are diapering it's hypothetical. If you're diapering in a place that you're diapering the baby, then you're leaving that place, and you're not coming back there till a few hours later, let's say, and no one's going to be bothered by it. You want to be allowed to take the diaper, you have to leave it there. You want to be allowed to put it to the garbage. Okay, it's hypothetical. It's not the usual situation. Then there is, when we talk about extracting and squeezing liquid out of material or out of fruit, then you have sucking, taking a fruit and sucking the liquid out of the fruit. So you put a hole in the fruit, or you're biting into it, and then you take the fruit to your mouth and you're sucking the liquid out of the fruit. There is a machlekes if this is considered extracting, if this is included in the malacha of extracting, squeezing fruits. You're squeezing it, technically you're squeezing it out with your mouth. What is the halacha? The halacha is that we are strict. Our temperature should be strict. Whether it's challah dipped into liquid, or it's grapes or olives. However, the Alter Rebbe says by all other fruits other than grapes and olives, we can be lenient, and it's okay to put the fruit to your mouth and suck out the liquid. That's okay. We already discussed that you could squeeze lemons into a vegetable salad, giving a taste, because it's giving a taste into the vegetable salad. However, another way to do it is if where you're allowed to squeeze, if it's getting absorbed directly into the food. So if you're squeezing lemons and it's getting absorbed into the chal itself, whatever's getting absorbed is also permitted, even if it's not there necessarily to give a taste into that food, because whatever's coming out is actually getting absorbed into that food. You cannot squeeze a lemon into sugar, even though it's getting absorbed into the sugar, if your intention is afterwards to take the sugar and put it into the tea, because the ultimate purpose here is that it's going into liquid. So it's considered like you're putting it into liquid, and you cannot squeeze into liquid, only into solid food. Then we have about milking. Milking a cow is a malacha. It's exactly like squeezing grapes and olives. It's prohibited by the Torah. There is a situation, it would still be prohibited, but then it would be midrabanan. I'm going to make it difference practically, but I already mentioned it. And that is, if you are milking the cow and the milk is coming directly into food, you said you could squeeze a lemon onto vegetable salads and milking the cow into the cereal. It's still prohibited midrabanan because it's still the definition of extracting is we have two separate items, two different items, one contained inside the other, and you're extracting one from the other. Over here, it's two separate things. You have the food, you have the liquid that's coming out of the cow, and then you have the cow itself, which is inedible food, because you can't shecht on Shabbos. So it's still considered two separate items. You're extracting food from the cow that's not food, because even though technically it's food, but you can't shecht on Shabbos. So therefore, you're still not allowed, rabbinically, you're still not allowed to milk the cow into food. However, on Yom Tov, you would be allowed, if you're milking a cow that's designated that you would, okay, it's not relevant anyway. But anyway, I'll say it briefly. I have a cow that's designated for shechting, and you plan to shecht at some time, so it's for eating. So on Yom Tov, you're going to be allowed to milk the cow, milk it directly into food, because now it's food from food. The liquid is going into solid food, so it's like solid from solid. And the cow itself is also food because it's meat. It's a cow that you plan at some time to shecht and eat, and you're allowed to shecht on Yom Tov. So the cow has the status of food. So you're extracting solid food from solid food. So, anyway, not relevant. The Chachamim made a general prohibition, that is, that you're not allowed to use liquids that oozed out by itself Shabbos or Yom Tov, just like they made a decree with fruits that fall off the tree, that you're not allowed to use those fruits Shabbos and Yom Tov, because you might come to pick the fruits off the tree. So too, if you have a fruit, whether it's grapes, olives, or other fruits that's designated to be squeezed out, and the juice came out on its own, let's say, it's very juicy, or non-juiced it, that you're not allowed to use that juice Shabbos and Yom Tov. So you don't come to do it on your own. Included in that prohibition is also milk that was milked on Shabbos. Because even though it didn't come out by itself, but in relation to you, it came out by itself. The non-true milk, let's say. So it's the same status. That milk you're not allowed to use. So even though you're allowed to tell a non-Jew to milk the cow for you on Shabbos, but you can't use that milk on Shabbos. Wait till after Shabbos. Now, what way are you allowed to ask a non-Jew to milk a cow on Shabbos? You're allowed to ask him directly. However, you have to tell the non-Jew that the milk is for you. That's, you could keep the milk. Because even though we allow you to tell a non-Jew to milk a cow because the animal is a pain, but we have to avoid as much as possible that it's to minimize the level of the severity of the transgression. And a more severe level within the prohibition of telling a non-Jew is when it becomes an of shlichus, when the non-Jew is doing it for you, for your sake. So when you are telling him to do it, and you ask him to do it, and you tell the non-Jew he could keep the milk for himself, it's not doing it for you, it's doing it for himself. So this minimizes the level of the severity of the transgressions, even though in general it's not allowed. In this case, we're allowing it, but we still have to minimize as much as possible the level of the transgression. So we're still, now usually can't do strictly. We're still telling him to do something, even though he's doing it for himself. We're allowing it, but we're telling him that he could keep the milk for himself, so now he's doing it for himself. And then after Shabbos, you buy it back from him. Even if you're not paying him full price for it, it's also okay. Now, if he's hired, if you have a worker, that's their job to milk the cow. 365 days a year, that's their job. And they get a salary for not per every time they milk the cow. They get a salary for the week, the month, whatever. Then it's okay. Then there's no issue at all. There's no things for you, but yeah, he's doing it because that's his job. It's not called shlichus because he's getting paid for the job, not per day. And he has a specific job that he's doing. So therefore, that's 100% okay. We know we can't use steel wool on Shabbos. Why can we use steel wool? We use steel wool, this liquid absorbed inside the steel wool, huh?
No, but it scrapes away the material that you're rubbing.
What do you mean scrape away because you're breaking the material?
No, like the pot or pan that you're like, it will take off some, you can't really squeeze water out of steel wool, but it does like scrape away the pot or pan that you're washing.
So you're saying it's a problem with the statement way. The issue is because you're squeezing out liquid from the steel wool. The water is being squeezed out from the steel wool. That's the problem. The fact that you're scrubbing against the pan, I'm not sure what you mean because you get taking up dirt from the pan.
No, like it takes off the coating.
Right. So right. So, but we're not concerned about that. That's not a concern because it's minuscule. Whatever you're doing, you're not fixing, you're not destroying. Whatever's coming off is minuscule. It's barely, there's nothing, it's not an issue to us. The issue is that when you're putting pressure on with the steel wool, there's liquid coming out of the steel wool. That's our issue.
But what about sweat? Like I thought there was
You're not allowed to smooth. You're not smoothing anything.
You're smoothing.
You're smoothing the pan. It's not bumpy or something. The pan is what it is. It's not becoming any smoother than before. You're removing the dirt that's stuck to it. Definitely gets smoothing it out, but it's not really smoothing it out. Because there's something stuck to it and you scrub it, so now you can call it smooth, but the pan was smooth before. You didn't change anything to the pan, so it's not an issue.
I have a question about
Yes.
the milk and stuff. What is the practical application for like humans, for like women who like pump milk for their babies? Like, can we do that on Shabbos?
So, good question. So pumping women pumping for nursing is a big issue. And you're talking about the pumping to give to the baby, not to
Like I have.
not to spill out into the.
And like she's Yemenite and her husband follows like the Babatree program. And she asked like one and one said like the milk had to like have soap in it and the other said it's fine.
Okay, so here's the thing. If sometimes they are milking, sorry, I'm sorry about that. Sometimes they're taking out milk because they're in pain and they have to do it otherwise, and they're not necessarily doing it because they need the milk and they're gonna throw it out. If they are taking out milk, it's called expressing milk, right? They're taking out milk and they're throwing it into the garbage, they're not using it, then it's fine. Because they're in pain, I mean, it's fine because they're in pain. In other words, it's not something that is allowed to be done just randomly, and do it anyways, saying this idea of extracting and it's going to the garbage, we allow because the woman is in pain. In other words, like you can't use steel wool on Shabbos because liquid is coming out. They're not interested in liquid. It's spread rabbinically. So the same thing is they're expressing milk because they're in pain, so it's going to waste. Generally, we prohibited rabbinically because they're in pain. We allow it. If they're taking out the milk because they need the milk for the baby, then it's not allowed, generally speaking. However, so chatchila, if they can have a non-Jew do treat with them, it's very unusual. Usually they don't know in that situation or they're not comfortable, whatever. So if that's not an option, then it's a big issue. And if the baby really needs the milk, and the baby's, let's say, under 1 year old, then there is a leniency. There is a leniency that a baby is in the status of a chaylesh yesh b'satan. It's brought down in Sodom that a baby up to 1 year old has the status of someone whose life is in danger, even though not technically, but because they're dependent on it. So it comes out that they have that status of their life in danger, and therefore they would be allowed. If it's over 1 year, it becomes a little more complicated. I mean, there's a lot of details I can look into, but generally it is a problem because it's a real malacha. It's minatayna. In other words, it's issa minatayna to take out milk when you're interested in the milk. So it's a problem. Yeah. Now, steel is an issue. Here is an issue. So, men or women going to the mikveh on Shabbos, and then they want to dry them hair. They cannot just dry their hair in the regular way because when they take the towel and scrubbing their hair, they're actually extracting the water from the hair. Now, they're not interested in the water that's coming out, so it's prohibited rabbinically, but they are extracting water from their hair, and that's not allowed. It's also a rabbinical form of extracting, and the reason is because steel wool doesn't actually absorb water, it traps water. So it's not a real form of absorption. So even if, let's say, you would be interested in the water, hypothetically speaking, it's not a biblical form of extracting because it doesn't actually absorb, it traps water. But it's still prohibited, so they cannot take the towel and just scrub their head with it because they're squeezing water, technically, rabbinically, they're squeezing water out of their hair. So what do people do? You take the towel and you just put it over your head. You just put it over your head like this, and it absorbs. You ought to put slight pressure. You can take the towel and just go like that. The towel that you can do. And change the position of the towel, it gets wet, put another part that's dry, and you keep on changing the position. And you can move the towel around in different places. You could, you're not just keep it in one place. After a few seconds, not going to do anything. So you could move the towel around this way, that way, put under that, but you're not going like that. That's the main thing. For that reason, the custom is that we don't take even cold showers, even though we're prohibited to take hot showers on Shabbos and Yom Tov too. Yom Tov is a discussion for itself. But we're prohibited to take hot showers on Shabbos. Cold showers is not prohibited. However, the accepted practice is, and Tzemach brings it from knowledge, that we don't even take cold showers. And one of the reasons is because we might come to squeeze out water from the hair. So, the accepted practice is that we don't take cold showers. However, if someone is really desperate, and they're very, very uncomfortable, there is a leniency to take a cold shower. But generally speaking, the accepted practice is we do not take cold showers.
Did you fix your hair with water, but like not to the, let's say you just like let it sit there, like, don't squeeze it, nothing.
No problem. That's not a problem wetting the hair. The issue is when you're taking a shower and you in the shower and out of the shower, you are squeezing water out of your hair. You're just wetting it, you're leaving it alone. If you're wet, who cares? If you're soaking it, now obviously you're not going to soak it because what are you going to do? You're going to be stuck with it. So you're just wetting it, it's not a problem. Then we have crushing ice, things that are prohibited rabbinically, not in connection with the malacha that we're discussing, the Rashi, which was extracting, but it's a rabbinical prohibition because it gives the impression of doing malacha. It looks like you're doing something that's prohibited on Shabbos. So you cannot crush ice on Shabbos. I actually saw that if you just break it into pieces, it's not an issue, only actually crushing it. So if you crack it into a few pieces, that's how it's brought down. So crushing ice, you're not allowed because you're turning the ice into liquid. That's not really called extracting. Not extracting. You understand why it's not extracting, right? You're just changing it from ice into liquid. Rabbinically, it gives the impression like you're doing malacha because you're changing it to becoming something new. It's not mamash new, but it looks like, before it was this, now it's this. So rabbinically, you're not allowed to crush ice. That's why you cannot crush snow. I mean, even though we don't use the term crushing snow, the more accurate term is pressing. Like you want to build a snowman on Shabbos, and you're taking the snow and you're pressing it together. In the process of pressing, this liquid coming out from the snow, putting pressure together. Something going to be coming out. So there's no way you can build a snowman on Shabbos. Soap, using the bar of soap also, because using the bar of soap, you're putting pressure and you're causing the bar of soap to dissolve. So you are sort of like creating liquid out of the soap. It's dissolving. That's why we don't use soap on Shabbos. So we use the liquid soap. The liquid soap, and the better way of using liquid soap is that you pour the liquid soap into water. So now the liquid soap is dissolving into the water. So you're not, in other words, liquid soap is really, liquid soap is a point of discussion. Is liquid soap a problem or not? Now, why should liquid soap be a problem? So does it, because it has a certain density to it. So when you're using it, you are also causing a certain way to dissolve it. Sort of dissolving also. So there are some opinions who are strict and they say you can't use liquid soap. So they sell the Shabbos soap. Or you can take the liquid soap and pour it into the water. And if then the liquid soap melts, dissolves into the water, then that's okay, just like you could put ice into water. So you can't crush ice, but you can take the ice and put it into water, because when the ice goes into the water, even though the ice is dissolving, but it's not visible, you don't see what's happening. So what if you don't see? The provision is because of the way it looks, the impression that it gives. It's not in the loch in itself that is dissolving, just it looks like something is being created. So if you don't see it, it's this, if the ice is dissolving inside your cup of soda, there's no issue at all. The same is also if the liquid soap is dissolving inside the water, like you do dishes, and the water is filling up into the pots, then you put some soap, dish soap into the water, and it melts into the water, and then there's no problem. Many people, when they take out ice from the freezer, they would put it inside water for this reason. I'm saying many people would do it, but it's not obligatory. You could, halachically, you could just take out the ice and leave it on the table, even though it's going to melt, because it's not your intention that it should melt. So if, let's say, you were to take out ice from the freezer, and your intention is that you want the ice to melt, it's hypothetical. No one takes out ice because they want ice to melt. I need water, so I think ice, so the ice could melt, because I don't have any water. It doesn't make any sense. But I'm saying, so let's say we do that, you're not allowed. Let's say you want to take out ice pops from the freezer, with the intention that it should melt. Because you want to eat it when it's liquidy. It's very delicious, but it's frozen. You don't eat frozen for whatever reason. Let's say you're taking it out, putting it in a warm place. In relation to the freezer, it's a warm place. You're putting it, it should melt. You can't do that, just like you can't crush. But when you are taking out from the freezer, usually you take out ices, ice cream, ice cubes. Why are you taking it out? So it should melt? No. You want to eat it. You want to use the ice cubes, put it into the soda, whatever. You want to eat the ices and the ice cream when it's ice cold and it's frozen. So the fact that it's going to stop melting later, it's not your intention. So that's why it's not really. So that's why I'm saying you take out ice cubes from the freezer and put on the table for people. There's no halachic problem, but you'll see people putting it inside water, and that's good. It's a good thing. It's a better way to do it. So it melts into the water. It's not requirements, but it's a nice thing to do if you want to do it. Yeah.
So sometimes I make like a homemade dessert that's like very, very frozen. And I'll bring it to my host and I'll take it out at the beginning of the meal so it can physically be scooped after the meal. Otherwise, it's just too frozen to actually scoop. It's okay.
Right. Okay. So I was thinking about that as I was saying it. But when you're taking it out, my
So
understanding is it's not melting. It's not really melting.
Yeah.
It's coming from a point of being so frozen, not as frozen. It's not so frozen that you can't work with it. So you want it to sort of quote unquote defrost, but it's not really defrosting. It's turned from a state of totally frozen, where you can't do anything with it, to a state of frozen where you could scoop it out.
Yeah.
So it's not. When you talk about melting, not even turning into liquid. It's not turning into liquid. It's just not as frozen. So it's not a problem.
Thank you.
This is also the issue with using the toothbrush in Shabbos and Yom Tov. Why don't we use a toothbrush? Because the toothbrush is wet, has liquid absorbed into it. Okay, not really absorbed, it's trapped, it's like the steel one. Toothbrush and steel one is exactly the same idea in terms of how it traps the water inside. When you're brushing your teeth, the liquid is coming out from the toothbrush. That's why you can't use a toothbrush on Shabbos and Yom Tov. You could make your mouth wet and then use a dry toothbrush. You can do that. That's okay. Now, what you could do now, we're already talking about brushing your teeth. You could floss your teeth if you cut the floss before Shabbos and Yom Tov. No problem flossing the teeth Shabbos with pre-cut floss, as long as you don't bleed. So if you're not bleeding, you don't usually bleed, there's no problem using floss. You can use mouthwash. Use mouthwash, and then after you spit out the mouthwash, there's something left. Now, when using a dry toothbrush, there's something there. So you don't have toothpaste, but you have some mouthwash on the teeth, and there's something to then you would say mouth afterwards. So there's something you could do in terms of the teeth for Shabbos. Not totally, lost. Now, I just want to clarify one thing, because talking about taking stuff out of the freezer, just to clarify a little more. Even if you take something out of the freezer and it's starting to defrost, but as long as there's still ice in there, it's also not going to be a problem. So you have to keep that in mind. As I mentioned before, with ice cream, the intention is not that it should melt. But let's say if it was ices, right? Even if it's melting, but it's melting inside, there's still ice in there. So it's melting inside the ice cube. The ice is melting inside the liquid. So it's not visible the way it's melting. So it's usually not going to create any major problem then. It's melting unless it completely melts. Yeah. Something?
Yes, if you need a silicone toothbrush or if is a regular soft bristle toothbrush fine? That's from Shayna.
Usually the silicone is the Shabbos toothbrush.
Yeah. Silicone one.
So the Shabbos toothbrush is 100% okay, but it's Shabbos toothbrush.
Okay, but
Using a regular tooth, so using the Shabbos, it's made to use in the regular way. You make it wet and have Shabbos toothpaste. Like you do the whole 9 yards, everything. I'm discussing over here how you're allowed to use a regular toothbrush. Then, if you're not making the toothbrush wet, using it when it's dry, then there's no problem.
but you're putting mouthwash on.
Not on the toothbrush. You're putting it inside your mouth.
So regular toothbrush.
You're spitting out the mouthwash. You're not leaving the mouthwash inside your mouth. You're rinsing out your mouth with mouthwash, spitting out the mouthwash, and then using a toothbrush. So while it's now officially dry, the teeth are wet, but the toothbrush is dry. And now there's nothing absorbed inside the toothbrush that he's squeezing out. So there's no problem.
I think the confusion is coming in. Last year, we learned that you should put mouthwash in your mouth and with the mouthwash in your mouth, brush your.
Someone asked that question, could you leave
Yeah.
it inside? And I said that you're allowed, I think I said I wasn't sure, or something like that. I don't know how it's possible to have the mouth to have a toothbrush inside your mouth. It means you're opening your mouth and the mouthwash stays inside. I don't know how that works.
You just have a small amount.
As I guess I'm said, if there's a small amount, there's something left. It's not, I don't know how, I guess it could work. I don't know how exactly that would work. The mouthwash is staying inside your mouth. Where's it staying?
Kind of tilt your head back and don't swallow it.
So the mouthwash is staying on the bottom. It's staying on your tongue, in the back of your throat.
Yeah.
There's no connection between the mouthwash and the toothbrush is coming in dry.
But when you.
I mean, it gets a little wet, but that's not the issue. The toothbrush has no liquid inside. So that, as I said, it shouldn't be an issue. But how is it helping you? I don't know how it's helping because it's not, the teeth already became wet from the mouthwash. So what are you gaining by leaving it inside? It's sitting in the back of your throat. So what is it doing? No connection between that and the toothbrush. I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah.
We were going to play a prank, another prank in sivan. We thought it'd be funny to bring Yael to class when you walked in.
To bring Yael,
The class when you walked in, but I never went this morning, so.
we were planning to do it. Now you told me, now it won't be a prank anymore. to do
Well,
it.
I have one class left. I'm not doing it on my last day, so I thought I'd just tell you. I have one class left. So I thought I'd tell you. Sorry.
I was going to do it in a different class.
I'm not bringing Yoel's. Apparently, your daughter did that and brought him to Base Rivka one day. So I was like, "Can we do it? Bring it to Mahan," and she was like, Oh. We all ate there. Everyone on this road.
Oh, yeah, we did. It was so nice.
Yeah, Bailey really liked it.
Yeah.
Shayna also really liked it. I always really like it. Eating it down. Really fun.